Hello and welcome to another video. So today I'm taking a look at a hybrid puppet and portal deck. This is one of two hybrid portal decks that I've been playing at the moment and messing around with. This one I think had a little bit better structure to it, at least that's what it felt like to me. Although I'm not really sure at the moment. I really need to do a lot more testing into hybrid puppet decks and see where that's going to lead me, because at the moment this one isn't too bad, but it definitely lacks some of that strong mid-game power that I'm really looking for. And I did replace the cog spinners with Mortons only because I only have one cog spinner, and I really didn't want to have one cog spinner and one Morton, although that might end up being better, so might be something I do. Plus, with how many Blood, Shadow, and Portal decks are floating around, Morton actually has some value in its card, even though I never really got to use it much. At least the value is there, and potential for anything good is there as well. So hopefully guys will enjoy this, and we'll get right into the video. So first up we have Portal. Portal on Portal has been a pretty common one for now. I do like to play Nexus when I'm using any kind of puppet variation deck. It helps me separate my artifact and puppet decks a little better, so it's a nice way to do things. So Submission and Hamlin are nice. The Orpheus is good, except it's probably a bit early. I would probably wait and just save it for later in the deck, and probably go for that early Goblin play was definitely a better choice. So aiming for early drops I think is important to secure your early game and generate your puppets for later. Of course, I haven't had enough time with the deck to really discern which way is super powerful, and of course this video is made a little in advance, so do keep that in mind. I'm sure a better version of this deck has come out by this point if you guys are more veteran players or long-term players and you're looking for a more advanced deck. Definitely head over to the Shadow Nexus Discord or any other major Shadowverse related content page, whether it's Facebook, Discord, anywhere like that, and you'll find decks, so do check those out. Twitter's also a great source. If you search hashtag Shadowverse_decks, you will find plenty of things being posted all the time. So pretty standard Portal plays from here so far, just trading with the early game. Trying to make sure that I have the dominant plays is always important here, which is why Cat Cannoneer and stuff like that are extremely valuable. They go for the synthetic being, obviously, looking for what they can get out of it, setting up their own Hamlin. And of course their rush puppets, good value, killing off that Cat Cannoneer early. But I can pretty much instantly counter this with substitution and puppet. So I mean, is it really that big a deal? We do have a pretty simple setup with this Hamlin too. Being able to abuse it is always great. Getting its cheap duplications or even higher cost duplications work out in your favour quite nicely most of the time. So I do decide to go for the Cat Cannoneer trade. It does stock me up with some more ancient artifacts, which are great things to have. And if I can even duplicate a flower doll, I can even get more puppets and more generation in that search as well. So being able to keep a good balance of puppet cards and artifact cards seem to really benefit this deck. And there is their flower dolls, so it looks like that's what they're pushing. And I do draw the puppet strings. I do go for the substitution though, because it's an instant removal. And the Machine Soldier actually does a good job at setting up my future turns, while at the same time I'm not really spending these evolves much, so spending one here to remove puppet is going to be fine. But you can see where something like Morton would come in handy, because Flower Doll would actually get the trade with Morton. Morton's evolve would have obviously absorbed it, and a play like that could have been a lot bigger. And we see the Victoria getting its own drop, especially when you've got Zui, or Zwei, using that. It's really interesting. It does leave them up with a 4-4, which does have to be answered. So I decide to go for the Hakarabe. I decide that's the best play. It gives me a heap of artifacts. And I can use the immediate evolve to trade into this 4-4 pretty reasonably. So like I said, keeping a good puppet stock and a good artifact stock are kind of key. That's why I've got a Flower Girl on board, one in hand, and of course Puppeteer Strings still in my hand. It would be a great way to deal with their own puppets, which is awesome, or even early artifacts like these ones.
I must rest.
But the lack of now is the fact that the cards that are in our hand have to be used, and we don't really have any way to continually stock them, which is unfortunate. So this is where things get a little more interesting, because I am forced to just try and get whatever I can and take advantage of whatever I can for the rest of the game. until we can either draw into a Noah Lethal or into a Orpheus, I don't know. Either way, pronunciation, definitely not my strong suit. So we do want to get rid of this 3-4 kind of as effectively as possible. And going with this kind of trade seems to be the better option I could probably go with. It does also let me have a couple of puppets in case I draw into something decent.
Not set to its counter.
Fortunately, we didn't have any other artifacts left, but I really wanted something on board that was going to present a threat. And I didn't really want to use Morton yet because his evolve has some value to me going forward. So if I can just hold off a little bit with it, I could at least absorb something else, potentially.
So can I experiment on
Or even just hold me evolve until I could use it with something bigger for a bigger swing. Would be really nice. So we finally get Puppet Girl. We'll go for the Vengeful Puppet, of course. I think that's the best way to go with it.
It can't be restrained.
It does let us pretty much abuse the puppets.
Take this to spare.
Now I can also then use the Ancient Artifact as a trade material and not even have to worry about this. I do send out the extra Ancient Artifact just so they have to deal with that little bit more on my board. So 5 damage to their face, a 6-5 on board, and if they leave up the 5-4 or the 1-1, both will combine anyway. So they really need to deal with everything as immediately as possible, and Puppet Strings is actually a perfect way to do that. So with how many puppets they probably have generated by now, they've definitely got the upper hand in the puppet field, but it is wasting a lot of puppet resources to remove these cards. A lot of these storm puppets they wanted to use on my face, and unfortunately are being absolutely lost right now. Although I'm not in a great spot either. I mean, I've got 2 cards to my name, and it's as far as I can go with it. I do decide to go with the Puppet Strings though, definitely setting up the Vengeful Puppet Noah. I really wanted to get that as early as possible because I think that's going to be my best chance at a swing going forward. So we're on 20 health, which means we can stand to take a fair bit of damage. I do decide to throw the Morton and the Lion out as my best kind of answer this turn. Even though I probably should have just went for Vengeful Puppeteer Noah and sent 3 to face and then just held onto my puppets for a turn, which could have been potentially better. But this also at least will absorb a puppet, which I always enjoy doing. The more puppets I absorb, the less damage they're going to have to deal me to the face. And we happen to get a second Vengeful Puppet Noah, which means I now want to hold on for one more turn, which will easily present us with lethal, provided they don't have any sort of ward or healing. Which even small healing would actually be fine. It's mainly wards that would cause an issue. Which they would still need 2 wards, so honestly I don't think there's much that Portal could have done to have survived this turn. They already have to spend resources to remove Noah. And my immediate Noah into 4 puppets is going to be really hard to deal with. Especially when those puppets have already been buffed once.
My past, my future, they matter not.
So you do have to get a little lucky, especially in your win conditions. I found that sometimes it can be quite hard to get those all into your hand in time, and I think that's more of a draw power issue, so I do want to try and sort that soon, and hopefully allow for a little more draw power in the deck. But in this case, it did quite well, and we ended up 5 damage over lethal, so not too bad at all. So, on to the next game, which is Shadowcraft. Shadowcraft presents a few problems, since Zeus Shadowcraft seems to be one of the more popular combinations of craft. But at the same time, I think I can have an interesting match against them. I mean, they do present interesting things with Cerberus, and I do enjoy that, so why not? Of course, there is the Hamlin there, which is going to go really nicely with either Substitution or Flower Doll, so that's always good. And double Hakrabi, so if we can get a couple of artifact generations, we actually have some good draw power. This is the only one of few draw powers we actually have. So they sent the Aisha out early, which means they probably aren't running in Zeus, or if they are, they really wanted to push their aggression to the max. Sculling, not really a problem when you got a substitution. I mean, we could remove the entire board pretty easily if that's the route we want to go down, and their Skull Ring isn't really going to get any benefit from summoning a normal skeleton, which honestly is fairly good. You certainly have a puppet. Of the girl, we're definitely going to be keeping our puppets for as much as we can, while trying to generate as many more as we can. So I do decide to go with Flower Doll, because I believe that's probably the best way for us to get value and generate puppets at the same time, instead of just duplicating an outright puppet. And since we already have 2, we've already got an advantage, so it's going to be a nice place to go with that. Of course, Cirrus of the Night is a little difficult to deal with, but at least Otherworld Rift is going to be an immediate answer to it.
I am but a single petal of many.
It's a pretty good way we can go when we can just answer this immediately with a Otherworld Rift, even if we're not drawing any artifacts from it. So I can then use the 1 damage puppet because we don't need too many puppets, and I think 2 should be fine. As long as we have those to activate, we should do okay. And getting early damage in is extremely important, so this Hamlin for 4 damage I saw as absolutely necessary. Of course they go for the evolve themselves, they don't want to have to deal with this. Substitution is going to generate another puppet, and then we can pretty much play whatever we want. And Lion's actually a really good card to get now. Being able to abuse our Lion will allow us to at least have a turn 7 play with our Hakarabi. Although we're probably not going to be in Resonance, so that's a little bit of a disappointment there. Finally an Underworld Ruler. Going for their trade. We can't afford to waste puppets, so that's definitely not the route I want to go down. But we can use our draw artifact to get us another card at the same time as trading, so that will always be quite good. I think a Zeus variant would have been an absolute nightmare for me to deal with, but this variant of Shadow really isn't as big a problem. And considering Zeus will be gone next expansion, I can see that Portal will probably be absolutely crazy by that point. So another Sudwin going for that potion. Not really an issue to us because we can go for the immediate Puppet of Vengeance, which when you've got triple puppets already, we can quite easily go for some damage and a nice trade-off as well, which is going to make it hard. While I would have liked it to have more health, I think this is still a good way to go. Because you really need to answer a minimum of 3 cards if you want to remove this. Well, actually, technically a minimum of 2, but I mean, in most cases you don't want to leave the storms up either, so a minimum of 3 usually is required. Of course, they have the perfect Mist of Extinction, probably one of the few cards that could actually deal with that board in any kind of efficient manner. And unfortunately Morton doesn't have its evolve available, so I can't actually abuse it in the way I would have liked to, but I can at least try duplicating Lions so I can get more value out of my Hakarabe going forward. And at this point in the game, as long as we can keep generating boards, Shadow really doesn't have much chance unless they go for Zeus. And I just don't see this Shadow in particular running Zeus right now. Because they need to answer my board every single time to really stand a chance. And while they did a pretty nice job that turn, next turn I don't think it's going to be the same story.
Not set to its counter.
Especially with double analyzing artifacts boosting my hand even further. So all I really need to do now is bolster it. Flower Doll does a good job at that because we are going to basically guarantee a chance at another Flower Doll. And our opponent luckily gave up anyway, obviously not being able to deal with another board of the same size as the last. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I had some fun with this deck, and it's definitely one that will hopefully improve as the expansion goes on. I feel like puppets have a lot of strong cards, and hybrids have a lot of strong cards as well because of the fact that artifacts are already strong. So with a bit of a refinement and seeing how the matches go, I think you definitely have some potential to build some pretty crazy decks. And I'm sure we'll see more of those as the expansion continues as well, and I will be covering a lot of them. So stay tuned to the channel to check out more Portalcraft, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.